So I think the year was 1985, could have been 86. Um, I was the sales manager of a real estate company. And there was a guy there, his name was Blaine. He was the youngest guy in the company. I think he was like 24, and I was sitting at 27 or so. Um, Nice guy, really nice kid. He always dressed really well. He was the nephew of one of the two owners. And he really wanted to make it go and really be successful at this. And he worked hard. He came into my office one day and said, "Man, I consistently average about $1,500 a month income." And I said, "Well, that's not too bad. But what do you want?" He goes, I want to earn $5,000 a month." And he kind of said it low because he didn't want anybody else in the office to hear him. And I went, "Well, that's doable." Now you got to remember, back in 1985, 86, $5,000 a month would be about 14,500 today. So it was a pretty big ask for this young kid going, this is where I want to be. But his mindset coming into this was, I can only earn, and that's how he described it, I only earn $1,500. That only begins to give him insight to his mindset or his paradigm, what he actually thinks about himself, not what he tells other people, but what he actually thinks about himself. So, of course, I got to know this young guy for a few months before we had this con. He was comfortable having the conversation, and I said, "Well, 5,000 a month, absolutely doable," because I had done it. And he said, "Well, I don't know how." I said, "Well, let me ask you a few questions. If you were making $5,000 a month, tell me how you would follow up with your prospects." And he had to think for a minute. He goes, "Well, I'd have more confidence. I would, call them. I wouldn't put off calling them. I'd want to call them." And he started talking about it. I said, "Good. Okay. So good concept. Journal on this tonight. We're going to really get started on this project tomorrow morning." So, okay. Well, he had direction now, right? Without, it says in the Bible, without vision, people perish. But with vision, people will flourish, right? So he had a sense, he had a vision of he was going somewhere. So the next morning before he got in, because I always got there earlier than anybody else, I left a little sticky note on his desk saying, "What does somebody making $5,000 a month? How many prospects do they call today? Or how many in different days?" I'd write another one. How many follow-ups would somebody making $5,000 a month do? What would be their attitude? Just different questions. And he'd read it and look at it. And an hour or two later in the day, he'd come into my office and he'd answer it the way a $5,000 person would. This went on for a couple of weeks. And he comes in my office one morning, you could just see it on his face. And he's like, "Oh." And all of a sudden I said, "I'm dealing with old Blaine now, not new Blaine." I said, "Okay." And he goes, "We got a problem." And he looks at me like, "You're going to solve it," kind of a thing, right? And I said, "Okay. Tell me the problem." And the specifics I forget, but one seller didn't want to close, and he'd already threatened the closing attorney, and the buyer was pissed off. I mean, it was just one of those. So, and then he gets done telling me what's wrong, and he leans in again and looks at me. He's standing up, and I'm sitting at my desk, and he leaned over my desk, looking at me like, "So solve it for me, Dave." And I was like, "Okay." I said, "Before I give you my opinion, if you were making $5,000 a month, going back to what he wanted, right? And I wanted him to be from that position. I said, going back to you making $5,000 a month, if you were making that, how would you handle it?" And he said, and I swear on the Bible, this is what he said. I said, "How would you handle it?" He goes, "Oh," he stands up. He goes, "Oh, that'd be easy." And he started listing off everything. Well, first I called the selling attorney, and then talking to him, I would talk to the seller, and he had this whole little plan. It was all there. And he gets done and he goes, and he looks back at me like, "Now I'm supposed to solve it." I said, "Blaine, did you just hear what you said?" "Well, yeah." I said, "Those are great ideas. That's exactly how I think you should handle it." And he goes, "Wow." And I said, "Blaine, I got one more thing for you." He goes, "What?" I said, "Get out of my office. You're wasting my damn time now." And he walked out laughing because he finally got, at least at that point, that who he had been being was not powerful. It wasn't the person he wanted to be that would actually get the result. But when he took that on and put that sort of a coat or whatever you want to call it and started acting from, Neville Goddard would say, you want to assume the feeling of the wish desired, or the wish fulfilled is what he said. And as soon as you assume that, you start acting. Notice as I talked about that, I'm now sitting up a little bit more. I have a little more confidence. I'm more direct. I'm more, whatever those things are, that's what you want to practice, because your old paradigm is just that. It is how you grew up. It's how what you saw. It's what the first 3 or 4 years of your life, you were an open vessel, and everything coming from your parents, older siblings, the environment told you the way the world was. And you've been living that way for the last 25 years, 35 years, 45 years, people like me, 65 years. And you don't question it because it's hard to see. It is the way the world is. So the one way to change that, and you can go through Neville Goddard, you can go to Bob Proctor, Dr. Joe Dispenza. The way to change it is to take on and start living from, not about, but living from you having that result. Right? It's even in the Bible. Whatsoever you pray for, when you pray, believe you have already received it, and ye shall have it. Kind of straightforward, right? Same thing. That's how you need to act. So, end of story with Blaine. The next 60 days after this point, he started making $5,000 a month. So pretty exciting. He sort of just shifted. It was always there, always in him. And you can't get rid of an old paradigm by pushing it away. That just gives it power. You've got to create or choose and then act from the new one. How does that apply to your business? Been in network marketing for a while? Maybe a couple different companies. This is common, by the way. And yet having the same results, you're thinking, well, it can't be me. It's got to be the company, right? I've done that a few times. What if all we had to do was just shift how you look at it? Instead of the old you got the old results. Who do you need to be? Who do you need to become? What's the state? And this is not fake it till you make it, because I think that's garbage. But what state you need to, who do you need to be, and what attributes does that person have who has this new result? Got a couple other videos in here that kind of go a little further deep into this, but that's where the process, and that's how you can apply Blaine's story to your business and to your life. Hope you found that helpful today. And remember, you got this. We'll talk soon.